Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience as we were getting that little technical piece together. I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with you to discuss today's topic of capacity building partnerships. My name is, first let's do some housekeeping. Myself, I'm a white male in my late 30s, soon to be 40s, red and blue plaid shirt, sitting in my office. Have a lone plant behind me growing very slowly. And for cart captioning, we have our stream text today. That link is in our chat feature, and our ASL interpreter is also pinned into the video. So if you need those are the resources that are there. We will be screen sharing today for the beginning portion of the conversation. So please make sure that you are in the side-by-side mode for your Zoom. And then as always, ILRU will appreciate your feedback in completing an evaluation after today's conversation. My name is Tyler Morris. Like I said, I am the executive director here at CIL Jacksonville. We are in Florida, have a 5-county catchment area. I have been with my organization now for 17 years. Started part-time in an assistive technology program and have moved up to now had the privilege to lead our organization for the past 7 years. Also the Network of Centers representative for Florida and have served in other capacities for the network as well. So I have done pretty much every job when it comes to CIL, which I think that we're all pretty familiar with the hats that you have to wear some days. And I'm really grateful for that too, because it's kind of helped me on this conversation that we're going to have today about building partnerships, capacity building partnerships. So how today is going to run, we have about 20 minutes of some information that I have pulled from some of the resources that I refer back to and that have kind of led to shaping some of our capacity partnerships, that I'm going to share some of those cliff notes and highlights with you for us to have a conversation. And that those last 3 bullets are the same thing. It's just that good. We had to say it twice. But today we're going to talk about capacity building and its definition, and also networking. The next thing that we're going to talk about today is adopting a network mindset, what that means and why it's important to capacity building partnerships, and then the actual practice of building capacity itself. So we'll spend about 20 minutes talking about that and then go into some reflections and discussions. And I hope as we're moving through today's presentation that you might jot some things that you would either like to share with the peers in our conversation, or some reflections that you might have had an aha moment or would like to learn some more about to talk about at the end of today's presentation. It's always good to start with a definition, right? And before even capacity building, I think that we need to think about capacity itself. For some reason in my head, every time I think of capacity, I think of a jar or a cup that you just fill to the brim with as much liquid as you possibly can. And whatever it can hold, that is the capacity. And how we're going to relate to that in today's conversation, it's more of looking at not liquid, but capabilities, knowledge, resources, and all of those other items that it takes for your CIL to be effective. So if we're looking at all of those things that are by definition capacity building is whatever is needed to bring a nonprofit to the next level of operational, programmatic, financial, or organizational maturity, what brings you to the next step, so that you may effectively and efficiently advance in your mission. We're going to make reference to some of the research that has been done on this and some of the findings that have taken sometimes decades of study to look at the benefits of capacity building and its relevance to networking and your organization. The next definition, I think fabric, if we move from liquids to fabric, if we look at fabric as something that we could connect to networking, and yesterday I had the opportunity and privilege to talk to other executive directors on the ILRUTA call, and you have to understand that the partnerships are synonymous to networking. Partnerships are networking. They are networks. They are that fabric of the folks that you're able to count on to show up to support you, to provide feedback or insight or resources. Sometimes that might be an individual relationship. Some of those examples for operationally would be maybe staff as part of an operational network, things and individuals that help you do your job more effectively. A personal network, which might be folks that are like-minded like you outside of the organization that are able to find opportunity with you for personal growth. So that might be an alumni association. Another example might be I'm part of a beekeepers association, you know, because there's a lot to learn there. So personal interest, I'm sure everybody can probably think of an example of that. And then lastly, strategic networking. And I think for this group, this one is very important to consider, because a lot of the readings and research that's been done is moving from a manager to a leadership role. It's very critical to be able to understand the importance of strategic networking, which is more of a forward-facing approach to networking. And it's taking those operational and personal networks and leveraging them in that fabric to get you and your organization to where you need to be in your strategic plan or in the future. So those are some definitions that I'd like us to consider when we're talking about networking or partnerships. Some other examples that you might have, this is an example of a network showing up for these calls and getting resources and having connections. Cliff Notes version, the best resource is very available to you with a national network of CILs. There are people with your same role or at least job duties that might have more tenure or experience, and relying on them to help you build capacity in what you're either doing in your own job or greater for your organization. They're at your disposal. And we've had the privilege in Florida to do that. At the beginning of the pandemic, we created our core connections, which connected individuals with similar titles or functions. And I heard yesterday in the call that there was another state that has done that as well, and it's proven very effective to them. But that is a really great example of a network, being able to share those foundational philosophies and values, not having to recite the 5 core services because it's already committed to memory, and all of those definitions that sometimes we already have to give some descriptions on anyway, but that is a really great network. So Cliff Notes version, those resources are already at your disposal there. So adopting a network mindset, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I wanted to share this chart with you because forming a partnership, there might be a shift, a paradigm shift for us in how we approach relationships. On the screen is a chart where on the left-hand side are some of the topics, and then how it differentiates between an organizational orientation, looking at it for your organization versus a network perspective or a network orientation. For mindset on an organizational, the knee-jerk sometimes that we have is competition, that there are not enough resources and we are all fighting for that. But a network perspective, a partnership perspective, looks at that collaboration. For a strategy for impact, this is a really interesting concept that I hope that you can take with you and to put into practice. Is we're very focused, I think, on our day-to-day work of growing the organization, being more efficient, being more effective. But I think that there is a space for us to consider growing the network or field. So in turn, it's easier for us to deliver our mission and grow our organization. So that perspective shift of growing and connecting with partners in the network to grow the field also helps grow our organization. Some of the typical behaviors that you'll see in an organization that has that organizational focus is competing for scarce resources, protecting knowledge, maybe trade secrets, some other resources that might be trade secret, develop a competitive advantage, hoarding talented leadership, acting alone or solo, or seizing credit and power. So how those look from a network perspective or a network orientation is growing that funding pie for all, for everyone that's in that field. Sharing the knowledge, developing skills of competitors, cultivate and disperse leadership, and acting collectively, and sharing credit and power, realizing that we don't always have to be the lead on something. The structure, which you probably heard, is a centralized or decentralized approach, being very insular in a structure, looking internally, putting that resources there, but then in a network perspective, making it decentralized. Empowering others to act and make those relationships and capacity building partnerships. There shouldn't be just one person, I think, in a CIL that has solo resource development responsibilities, whether it is greeting a consumer who's coming into the front desk, someone who is working with the accountant, to someone who is providing 5 core services or specialist, executive director, board members. All of those individuals have a responsibility of growing themselves and their programs as well. All right, this is where we get to talk about those 2 bullets, which are really the same thing. But on the three topics of the screen are some concepts that I've pulled. If you haven't read Forces for Good, I think that should be on everybody's bookshelf and not just sitting there, not with pages turned. It's a great resource for you if you haven't to read. So I suggest picking that one up. And then 2 other articles that have hyperlinks at the end. The National Council of Nonprofits, which has their own network like CIL's, where you might have one in your location, one of their research studies, and then also the Foundation Review for the 4 network principles for collaboration success. Taking a sip of tea, the Florida snow of pollen has hit us over here in Jacksonville. So the 4 tactics for forces of good, like I said, I wanted to give you some highlights and concepts for y'all to consider. Some of them overlap, but I think the ones that do overlap are important to hear again. Growing the pie is the first of the 4 tactics that Forces for Good list on how to build capacity. And it talks about how high impact nonprofits in their organization they fund other organizations, that they're actually resources for other individuals in their field or affiliations. You might be able to think of examples there. thinking of a relationship with your SILC, your State Independent Living Council. In Florida, we've been able to, our FILC has been able to secure funding or help secure funding for our network, and bringing at least, some resource development to others. So that would be an example of how building others in the network or field helps strengthen the organization and helps it more easily provide, or execute their mission in their communities. The second is sharing that knowledge. We had just talked about an organizational perspective. Insular perspective is, having those trade secrets. But I think that we all have examples of how, when we are advocates and have awareness, and if we are sharing best practices in hiring or inclusion or access or whatever that may be, it is a benefit to the person who is receiving that. It's part of our mission as something that we are required to do as CILs, but also, that business is going to benefit from a diverse pool of qualified and talented applicants. They will benefit directly from that. So sharing knowledge is really important. Developing leadership is also very important, in the third concept in the 4 tactics. And I think of a story that I was told, and you might have already heard it, but the CFO says something to the CEO about someone who is wanting to get a degree or continuing education. And the question from the CFO to the CEO is, what happens if we invest in this individual and they leave? And the CEO turns to the CFO and asks, what happens if we don't, right? So investing in leadership opportunities, finding those builds the network and partnerships very well. An example that we have in Jacksonville, our National Council of Nonprofits, the Northeast Florida Nonprofit Center, has developed through funding, has developed a leadership program for LGBT social service members that they can find, work among each other, and build skills. And that, I think, was a good example of being able to develop some leadership. You might be able to think of some others. Another is working in coalitions. You don't always have to be the lead to get things done. And you can play a secondary role to getting things done and be as effective, or maybe even more effective. And that's sometimes a hard concept to grasp. But like yesterday I shared, if you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, go solo. If you want to go far, go together. And working in coalitions or groups helps you go further for longer, I think. So those are some of the 4 tactics from the forces of good that we have. The principles of a networked capacity building, this is the article from the National Council of Nonprofits, but the first that they say of how to build capacity, what that foundational principle to do that is understanding what your priorities are. Why are you partnering with this organization? There has to be some intent for that, right? Other than just signing an MOU or sharing a logo on a flyer. One of the things that I have worked with our team to understand is I always ask 3 questions before we look at either, a partnership or addressing something in the community. And the first question that we ask is, does it align to our mission? Because if we can understand that, we have a lot of clarity on why we are doing it. The second is there a need in our community? We are community-based, consumer-controlled nonprofit organizations. And part of that is having a responsibility of developing those programs and services to develop or to address those systemic issues within our communities, and not self-serving programs for a donor or for someone because they think that it would be interesting. So that first, again, is does it align with our mission? The second is, is there a need in the community? And lastly, I ask, is there a way through this opportunity that we can get the resources that we need to execute? Or do we already have those resources available? So some of those questions when answering building a partnership or building your capacity are really critical. Research shows the time that you take to be intentional about the partnerships that you form, understanding the cost benefits, understanding roles and responsibilities is really important to the success of the partnership long term. The second is learning from your peers. I think that's pretty self-evident of, network nonprofits are stronger. Having that capacity of the skill sets and knowledge and relating, kind of counting on your network for those resources is important. Third is utilizing technology. I think this is a really great concept too, and I think that probably in 2024 we all have had to do in some form or fashion, but how can I put the tools in the hands of the people who are building capacity for our organization, for your CIL? So what tools do you have available at your disposal that might take the responsibility of doing it directly, that you are able to do it for a larger group of individuals or even the network? And the last concept is making it last. So that talks about a partnership that goes far has a foundation of trust. And that's very important, of understanding the roles and responsibilities too. When you're looking at selecting a partner or a partnership to build capacity, you're looking at things like we talked about of a shared value system. You're looking at things of the expertise and experience that they can bring to that partnership. Is there a commitment to the partnership? Is it formal or informal? Do you have an MOU that's drawn up that shows what you're going to do as the purpose, the responsibilities that each of the organizations have, and what happens if that partnership does not no longer work for either organization? Another is communication, making sure that there's a good line of communication between organizations who are working together to build capacity. That's really important to have, as well as some confidentiality too, which I think that we all are aware of. So that's kind of a concept for the second bullet point from the National Council of Nonprofits. And lastly, and I wanted to take a second, was there a need to switch interpreters? I think that I was just seeing one interpreter. Are you okay, interpreter? Okay, great.
I'm good, thank you.
Yep, and then the last is the 4 network principles for collaboration success. Another 4 concepts that we have to talk about: focusing on the mission, which we've already talked about. Effective network leaders build strategies that advance the mission, even when there is no direct benefit to the organization. That is a concept that is more of that network approach versus organizational, of looking at how to build others. The next concept is building partnerships based on trust, not control. When you depend and can count on shared value systems and an understanding of philosophy like IL, then you know how someone's going to show up to the meeting or the partnership, right? Having that top-down control for accountability systems doesn't always work. In some situations, it's necessary, but as a partner, you know, Brene Brown says, "Clear is kind," and being very understanding of what the mission is, building that partnership based on trust of that understanding, to kind of foresee what barriers you might come across. Those are some ways to help do that. I think the third and the fourth are kind of work very closely together. The third concept as part of these principles is to promote others rather than yourself. So a partnership involves not just shout outs for your organization, but recognizing the successes of other organizations and being part of that celebration. That helps to build the trust and for the success. Some of these examples could be showing up to a gala, an outreach event, showing support, seeing one of your colleagues in a different organization on LinkedIn, celebrating an accomplishment, recognizing for them for that. That helps to build that partnership for capacity. And then lastly, I love this analogy, is to build constellations, not lone stars. And I think this is a repeated concept from the other things that we've just talked about, but a different way to look at it, and the analogy of we are here to grow the pie for everyone, because that makes it easier to deliver the mission at the end of the day. So it's really important to invest in that leadership. It's important to not go solo, to go fast, because it's the long game for that. So, you know, if I were to wrap this up, I hope that there were some concepts that you might be able to take with you, but I have to say that all of these readings and research, building capacity is very unique, just like someone's independent living goals, right? You would have a very maybe different approach to things that are specific for your community than someone in another state or in a different country. And the beauty of that is that we're able to work on those and build capacity for our communities too. So, oh yes, Sharon, I'm sorry, I just saw that meeting chat. I was expanding on those tactics or the principles. Who was that question from? So I hope that we are able to take some of those concepts and put them into practice, because at the end of the day, stronger nonprofit is a networked nonprofit. And putting ourselves out there to be that will build those resources. It will help fill our cup. It'll help get us another cup that we need that can hold more. It can help with the fabric of our networks and expanding those networks and being introduced to resources, ideas, concepts, and strategies that you didn't even know were available. So building capacity is really a practice at the end of the day. It's very intentional. And I hope that in your roles that you consider how to genuinely make those resources in and out of networks between operational or personal networks. How do you make them strategic? How do you turn those partnerships into something that can benefit you personally as well as your organization in the future? So I'm going to go ahead and conclude us here and to open us up for some conversation. And I'll check the chat really quickly.